we need people to know that if you go too in favor of Israel or condemn the Israel critical right, you're going to pay a heavy price too.
You don't get to pass on this one. Like,
Right.
You got to have an opinion.
And so people say, well, let them kill each other. If you've been paying attention, one side's doing a lot more killing.
They don't want to pay the price of being an Israel critic, but I think there's a new price that's going to come from not, taking a stand on this at all.
Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes just revealed the truth about the right-wing schism on Israel, why this is eating away at the Trump coalition so much, why it affects our domestic and foreign policy, and the shortcomings of the mentality of some on the right that I just don't care. They get into that and more. Great interview here, and I think this was the most interesting segment, so let's get right into it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
And there's this dynamic that I see building up on the right, and I will. And again, these are not people who I have anything personally against, but like Matt Walsh, Tim Pool. Tim's been very good to me. I consider him a friend. But they've all kind of taken this line of like, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care what's going on with Israel. Like, why are you guys so obsessed? Why are you so? And there's something so particularly enraging about it. And I think part of it is because I really genuinely believe, like, guys like me and you are like, we'd love to not talk about this.
Right.
That's kind of our whole argument.
Yes.
Our whole argument is that this shouldn't be a thing we even have to talk about. But saying, why are you obsessed with it? It's like in 2006, I'm sitting here and I go, look, I'm a non-interventionist, but why is everyone talking about Iraq? Like, why do you have to? Well, because that's where we're intervening. So, like, how can you sit here and be like, I'm a non-interventionist? Like you're taking the correct policy position from my perspective, so I at least give you credit for that. But the thing is, we are intervening. We are currently being interventionists. And also, like, if your whole thing is like, I want to focus on America, I don't want to go fight other wars. Well, who's pulling us into wars?
Right.
It ain't Lebanon, you know what I mean? Like, so like what, it just seems like cowardice to me. Like, how do you get, and it does seem like that message is resonating with like some people, as I just think it's profoundly unfair. Like the whole point of all of this is that it is an American destruction of Gaza. This isn't Israel doing it. Netanyahu goes around and brags about what Israel can do. Israel can't do shit. Israel can only do things because they have the full backing of the United States of America. So like, sorry, if you're in the world of talking about these things, you don't get to pass.
Yeah, that's right. Especially on this issue, impartiality is always partial in a way when you say like, I just don't care what happens in Israel. I don't care what U.S. policy is toward Israel, regarding foreign affairs or domestic affairs, geopolitical affairs. You're just defaulting to what is the current ruling establishment on the Israel question. And what is that? They're the largest recipient of U.S. aid. They're the largest, magnet toward U.S. militarism and whatever Israel wants to do in the Middle East. They're the biggest foreign policy recipient of aid, like I said, $300 billion since its inception, $32 billion since October 7th. So just saying you don't care is a way of just, not taking the blame for going against Israel, but just supporting the status quo in a tepid and milquetoast manner. I think it's pretty cowardly, and I get it. People prioritize issues differently. Some people will say, Dave, you're crazy. My name's Dave, by the way. I don't know that. I'm Dave, too. But they'll say, hey, I don't think that's as important as, taking down the Federal Reserve or the deep state or the IRS or the, CIA or FBI. Well, I can empathize with all of those ideas. But it seems like almost all of our domestic and foreign policy swirls around this question, especially now when it's the genocide, the war in Iran, foreign aid, the debt that we get into funding this, the inflation that comes from financing it by the central banks. So yeah, I'm with Dave on this.
On this one, like, you got to have an opinion.
Yeah, I saw that too, and it's become very popular over the past year and a half. I see a lot of the young men, they watch Matt Walsh, they watch this other stuff, and they say, well, yeah, I just don't really care about Israel that much. I care about America. And I saw Matt Walsh say that on Tucker. He said, and you could tell that it is like a rhetorical innovation, because let's be honest, this is an issue that people like Matt Walsh don't want to talk about because he works for Ben Shapiro, and he knows, like Candace Owens, if you drift too far on that subject, you lose your job. And he likes having a job. So you get it. Now, this is an extremely contentious issue also, and it's very topical. It's in the news, and he knows the question's coming. Are you pro-Israel? Are you anti-Israel? There's people that feel very strongly about it. And you could tell this is like a rhetorical device. It's a cop-out where you can say, I'm not pro-Israel, but I'm not anti-Israel. I just don't care. And that really pissed me off because it seems like you're feigning ignorance. You're either lying or you're really ignorant. And the reason why is because, be that as it may, that you don't care about Israel, we happen to be supporting their war, and it's actually hurting us. And there's other things too. Obviously, it's a big subject. There's a lot of this stuff going on. And so people say, well, let them kill each other. If you've been paying attention, one side's doing a lot more killing. Yeah. We're paying for it. We are, on the hook for all of it. And, so when they say, well, all that stuff, we don't care about it, whatever, be that as it may, it is going on. And until it stops or changes, we can't stop talking about it. It's like you said, we don't want to be obsessed with it, but if you talk about it, you get canceled. We have to talk about getting canceled. We have to talk about the thing in itself. And when that changes, similar on the same vein, people like Matt Walsh say, well, we should just end all foreign aid. It's like, okay, but they get like all of it. And it's not ending anytime soon. So
yeah, I agree with this for sure. I agree with Nick in almost every way. It's often said that, hey, we're the ones, the non-interventionist dissidents that don't adhere to this Israel first creed that the ruling class carries forward and everything. We're the ones obsessed with Israel, when it sure seems like that's downstream from the government obsession with Israel and bailing out Israel, financing its genocide, getting involved in whatever wars it wants, most recently in Iran, but also, in recent decades, Syria and Libya and Iraq and Somalia, all these countries that Netanyahu and the Likudniks and Zionists in general wanted toppled because of the clean break strategy, to do away with this idea that we can secure peace with our Arab neighbors and peace with the Palestinians. No, let's just do regime change wars. See how that works, and, fan the flames of the Greater Israel Project and the annihilation of Gaza. That's the strategy we're pursuing. I think he's a little hard on Matt Walsh here too. Like, it's pretty, under the Daily Wire atmosphere, it's pretty base to say no foreign aid to any country, knowing how much emphasis Ben Shapiro puts on Israel. But at the same time, it is more of a cop-out than I would like from portions of the right, so I empathize with Nick's view too.
You could sit there with your arms folded and say, well, I think we should end the foreign aid, but it's not really a big issue. Well, then you're in favor of the status quo. And that's kind of the whole point, is like, even if you're recusing yourself or you're complacent, if you're doing anything other than actively opposing, you're passively supporting the ongoing status quo. And that needs to be said.
Right. And it's
totally. I couldn't have said that better myself. That's exactly my point too. It's defaulting to the status quo when you say I don't care. That's how the regime gets away with the madness that is the empire building experiments throughout the world. Not just in Israel, but Israel is the focal point of that in the Middle East. Israel is the Middle Eastern branch of the American Empire Project, that's for sure. So I totally agree with Nick on that.
It just seems like, as you said, there's a price tag to be paid for opposing Israel, and you don't wish to pay that price. And I'm like, okay, I understand that, but your entire worldview, even down to the non-interventionist, clearly says you have to oppose this, but you don't want to pay the price, and so you'll just go like, oh, you guys are obsessed. You guys are obsessed with this issue. It's like, oh, it's a pretty relevant issue.
Yeah.
And and it's a disaster for the Trump base.
Right.
I mean, it's like just politically, it's a disaster for the Democrats also. It's a huge part of the reason why they lost in 2024, and not just because their base was so against the thing, but because it sucked all the energy out of the room that they needed to be in opposition of Trump. They needed young people to be their shock troops like they were in 2016 and 2020. And all those young people were protesting a genocide.
Right.
And they just weren't going to turn around and be outraged by Tony Hinchcliffe, doing a routine at Madison Square Garden after that. It's just impossible. So it was devastating to them, but they're still going to support Israel no matter what. And now Donald Trump, they say, oh, look, they're destroying the Trump coalition. And it's like, well, we're kind of not budging on this one.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say. Like, this is not, look, it's not just, first of all, just for moral reasons. Like, I'm not budging on an issue of genocide. I'm not doing that. But on top of that, just for sovereignty reasons, for the obvious, look, at the very least, even if you don't go nearly as far as me, let alone as far as you, Benjamin Netanyahu is a neocon at the very least, right? Like at the very least, he's a guy who testified before Congress advocating we fight the war in Iraq, in Libya, and advocates we fight a regime change war in Iran. If a guy with that track record was appointed as Secretary of State or as the Defense Secretary, every non-interventionist has to be against that guy.
Yeah, this is true, absolutely. So I totally agree with Dave. Can't be an untouchable subject from, the biggest media influencers on the right in the country for all the reasons he laid out. But this is true. Obviously, Netanyahu wanted the same things as the Bush dynasty that, Trump supposedly took out in 2016. He kind of did, but, those ideas that are still lingering, the neocon ideas of military strikes anywhere, ask questions later, topple these governments, overthrow them, are present in this cabinet and in this government. They're Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is a neocon. Mike Huckabee is a neocon. John Ratcliffe is a diehard Zionist neocon. Neocons fill this administration, not in every single position, but this isn't a non-interventionist administration. So, a lot of these people would not even go as far as to say that, Marco Rubio cannot be anywhere near this cabinet, let alone Netanyahu. So I think this issue goes beyond Netanyahu, but yeah, it should show you what Netanyahu did, echoing Bush to the T on Iraq, spreading all that propaganda about how positive reverberations will break out within the region. That says everything, and when you're not going to oppose him, it's very telling on where you actually stand when the road meets the rubber.
So how can you can't be for him? Like, it's just, and I do think that, I think there's like, they don't want to pay the price of being an Israel critic, but I think there's a new price that's going to come from not, taking a stand on this at all.
I totally agree. And I have kind of made that my mission. People hate the Groypers because the Groypers swarm on the internet. And
they sure do. They sure do, those bastards.
Even among my good friends who happen to be Jewish. No, they swarm and they make people upset and they're applying pressure. And that was something that I did very intentionally in 22. I did my AFPAC 3 conference. We invited Joe Kent, who was running for Congress, and he was America First. He's from the intel community, anti-war. I think his wife tragically was killed in Syria. And by all appearances, seemed to be a good faith critic of the war machine. Well, we invited him to our conference. He didn't show up. And then the next day, even though he wasn't even there, he disavowed me and said, I disavow Nick Fuentes. That's not populism. He said, particularly his views on Israel.
Well, that tells you all you need to know about the American right and the establishment and the grapple that the Israel lobby has on what would be good non-interventionist voices. Like, we saw these pressures on Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA play out due to the excellent reporting by Max Blumenthal and others. But you can see this happening, and I'm totally on Nick's side when he talks about that, hey, there will be a price to be paid, and Dave led into this discussion by saying that. It's right. This will not age well, man. If you look at what our posterity will grow up in, I don't think anyone can defend it. They're not even defending it now. Some of the most diehard Zionist neocons are not trying to defend this policy in Gaza anymore. You just saw it in the Coleman Hughes and Dave Smith debate, where even Coleman Hughes was saying, as part of the debate, I'm not going to try to defend Netanyahu and what he's doing in Gaza. And that's pretty telling, because that's not where Zionist Inc. was on October 8th, by the way. Things have shifted wildly against Israel. It's a PR disaster, let alone a genocide, and no one can be caught defending that madness. Sure, they'll have, different modified views saying, hey, Israel still has a right to exist and defend itself, and all this Hasbara propaganda. That's not what's happening. It's not exactly defending itself by attacking 7 of its Arab neighbors in addition to this genocide. But the point remains, and I think both Dave and Nick get this very well.
And I said, see, that's the problem, because, and this is going on to this day, whether it's Kent, Trump, Biden, Charlie Kirk, if you go against Israel, they make you pay a heavy price. You know, AIPAC is coming in with the berserkers, the ADL's coming in, like, you're going to pay. So what do? Hey, I got to get them off my back. I got to disavow you. I have to sign the letter. It's easier. It's the path of least resistance. I said, we have to create an opposing force and push in the other direction. We need people to know that if you go too in favor of Israel or condemn the Israel critical right, you're going to pay a heavy price too. You're going to get, and we don't have money power, but we got people power. You're going to have somebody in your district asking you about Israel at every stop. You're going to have stickers put up. We're going to make a website. We're going to do this. He lost by 2,000 votes. He lost by like less than 1%. Biggest upset in the midterms. Now, maybe that was us. Maybe it wasn't, but you can't know for sure.
Yeah, and I'm with Nick on this completely. So there needs to be counter response to this nonsense that we're seeing from the liberal establishment and the Zionists in cahoots together to push out dissident voices on Israel. Certainly there needs to be pushback of some kind, pressure in the other direction, and I think there's going to be more and more of it, partially because of the independent media shows like Dave's and Nick's telling the truth about these issues, about Israel and the plague that is the Israel first mentality. And it's the demographics of young people shifting against Israel, whereas their fathers and fathers' fathers, especially those that watched Fox News for 20 years and keep watching Fox News, are not usually on that side of the equation. Those things are intertwined. There's a Venn diagram between them, but I do think it's going to be possible to exert more and more pressure against this gravitation to Israel at all costs.
Now, looking back, would he have made the same remark? Maybe not, because he says it wasn't worth it. And I'm a big believer in we got to get serious. And this was the idea behind Groyper War II. This was the idea behind the what do they call them in Michigan in the Democratic primary? They voted like no preference.
Yeah.
We need to make it visible and known, like, yeah, AIPAC has the money, we have the votes. And like you said, we can't budge on that.
Okay, so here's where I would slightly disagree with you. Although I get your point. I certainly get the point about like making there has to be a price tag also for this. But to be completely fair here, you also have painted yourself into this position where you've and look, I'm not like being judgmental. First of all, as I said, this is something I think just as a society we're going to have to figure out going forward. Now that everybody's online all the time, people can't be ruined over what they said in their fucking 20s. It's just too crazy. It's too crazy. Everybody says, like, whatever. Anyone interesting has said crazy shit in their fucking 20s. That being said, it's not disavowing you. It's not just the anti-Israel shit. There's also all the Nazi shit on top of it. And I don't mean like you're a Nazi. I mean, okay, a lot of it might be sarcasm. A lot of it is that you kind of are the best at channeling like the energy of like talking shit on an Xbox controller. So like when I was a kid, we didn't have those, you didn't talk on video games, but we talked shit like that. Like I know that energy and I'm fond of it. But I could see where like anybody who's got to get anywhere in politics is like, listen, I have to, like, I can't take all that baggage. So in other words, there is a difference between, say, disavowing just the anti-Israel position and disavowing like all the extra shit on top of that.
Yeah, I actually don't think Nick was making the argument about anything other than Israel in this context, though I see where Dave is coming from. Oftentimes, Nick Fuentes develops a bad reputation, I should say, by getting into feuds with other critics of Israel and, saying stuff like, well, the reason that it's not good that they oppose Israel is because they don't oppose it for the right reasons. They don't understand deep enough that it's because of Judaism and the Judaist mindset. And I just don't think that's right. I think enough, Christian Zionists have the same views. And some people will say, well, that's just because of, a Jewish conspiracy leading them in that direction. And I think that's wrong. I think that's taking the culpability away from individual agency. A lot of these vile Christian neocons are making, like Lindsey Graham and John McCain did this, and Dick Cheney did this, and George Bush are doing this. And to be clear, Nick's not making that argument here. I agree with both of them. And it is the reputation that Nick's gained for having some of these feuds with good dissidents of Israel like Max Blumenthal and Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, where he says, like, hey, they might be right about these things or two, but they're not opposing Israel for the right reasons. And that's why I think it's drummed up a lot of allegations that he's a Fed, leaving my own opinion aside on that for the moment. But I think there does need to be pushback. It's not about, pushing back against an individual in general. It's about pushing back against the Israel first mindset, which does infect the right-wing establishment just as much as it infects the left-wing establishment. They're all in cahoots. Either way, amazing conversation. And this conversation really reminded me of the discussion that Ted Cruz had with Tucker Carlson some months back. Actually, that was in... I can't exactly remember when it was, but it was some months back where Ted Cruz was basically saying, hey, Tucker Carlson is obsessed with Israel, and here's my reasoning. Let's watch this real quick and react to it.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest.
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president of the United States and several precedents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
Sure, I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway. And by the way, the Brits are, the Canadians are. Like, I don't think...
Well, I'm not for that at all. Okay. I think it's disgusting. But we don't actually pay their... we're not their most meaningful sponsor. We're not sort of paying for the operations of the British government.
So I gotta say, and this is... It's weird. We're talking about isolationists, the obsession with Israel. Why is Israel...
Oh, I don't think I'm obsessed with Israel.
Okay, but I think a lot of people...
Yeah, I mean, this was like 3 minutes after Ted Cruz had said, like, he made it his mission when he became a senator to be the most pro-Israel senator. And this just gets at what Nick and Dave were talking about, that there's this idea that they're the ones obsessed with Israel, when it's actually the ruling establishment that defers to Israel and everything. And then we're downstream talking about it. Just like, hey, I wouldn't be obsessed with condemning or denouncing the invasion of Iraq if that's what our government focuses on to our detriment as taxpayers. That just came into my mind watching this debate, but not even a debate with, Nick Fuentes and Dave Smith. I thought that was productive. But what do you think? Do you think both Dave and Nick are correct about this? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Dave Smith. Awesome interview. There'll be more segments on my channel from this. It was a great conversation, but please consider supporting me as a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel. I will be very gracious for that if you go to that length to support me. And for a reward for that, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube if you do. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.